At the end of the day, it's all about character. And that's what I'm trying to teach my children. And fitness, a lot of times, is about character, right? When it's hard, do you give up or do you keep pushing, right? It's not about competing with the next person. It's about competing with yourself. I want to be better today than I was yesterday. And whether that means that it's a character thing or I can shave a second off my mile time, whatever it is, I just want to be better. And I think that especially in the world we live in right now, trying to be a better person and putting that like energy out into the world is going to benefit everybody, not just yourself, right? So when you have opportunities and you think about it and you're conscious, there's that little thing in the back of your mind and you can do it. Listen to that voice because they're right? Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right.
It's the Health in the Real World podcast. It's time to start the show with Chris Janke as your host. Here to give you everything that you need when it comes to fitness strategies. We keep it simple and easy. It's your roadmap to get healthy. You don't need equipment and you don't need a gym. Just the right strategies to get you fit and trim.
Thank you for joining me, Health in the Real World podcast. We're here today with Brian Cobb. Brian, how's it going today?
Doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great talking with you. We went to high school together and it's been, 20 years since we've been out, something like that.
21. Yesterday, my Facebook feed popped up with 1 year ago. People were posting photos from our 20-year anniversary. It's pretty wild.
Oh boy, 21 years. So the amount of time we've been out of high school can now legally buy a drink.
Yes.
People born the year we graduated high school can drink now. That's crazy. So Brian, you were always one of the top wrestlers in high school where we went. And then since high school, you went on and wrestled in college and you did some MMA fighting and some stuff like that. Can you give everybody a little bit of background as far as how you got into that and then what that kind of led to as far as your career goes? It's pretty cool. Sure.
It stems back kind of even further than that. So my dad and my uncle were really, really good swimmers in high school and then a little bit in college. And so Bellarmine, the high school we went to, has a great aquatics program. And my oldest brother goes and he tries out for the water polo team and comes home the first day. He's like 100 pounds. And he's like, Dad, they tried to drown me. And so he just realized that wasn't the sport for him. He got cut, he wasn't going to make it. And the only sport he was, the right size for was wrestling. And so, wrestling is for all body shapes, body sizes, there's weight classes, things. And so he got into it, and then all of my other brothers, we all followed suit. And so, I watched my oldest brother, fall short of his goals his senior year. And then my older brother, Dave, who was, really successful in high school, fall short his senior year. And I just swore, I was like, I'm not going to let that happen to me. And so I had a lot of success out of high school. I was Bellarmine's first All-American. And I got a lot of offers to wrestle in college. So, I went to Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is a private Catholic college, and wrestled there for 2 years, and then they dropped their program. So it was a great school, and it would have been great to stay there and graduate from there. But I, selfishly, I went to college to wrestle. So that was going to be my ticket to a degree. And I got recruited to wrestle at Cal State Bakersfield for my high school coach, Tim Kerr, his older brother, TJ Kerr, the head coach at Cal State Bakersfield. So I wound up there. I was a 2-time Pac-12 finalist. My senior year, I was in the round of 12, so I lost my match to become an All-American and a national place winner. And then 2 weeks later, I lost my match to make the Olympic trials. So I was a little bit kind of down on myself, and TJ Kerr said, hey, I'd like you to come on as a grad assistant and be one of the coaches here on the program. So 4 years later, I lost my match to make the Olympic trials again. And then I wound up coaching at CSUB for 14 years. I wrestled in the World Championships 5 years ago in Athens, Greece, where I lost in the quarterfinals. And so that left me ranked about 11th in the world, something like that in my weight class. And, hoping to try and once everything's with COVID passes, try to make another world team. but the wrestling side of things drew me into MMA. And my twin brother, Jared, and my older brother, Dave, both wrestled at UC Davis with a guy named Uriah Faber, who's now a UFC Hall of Famer. And after my college career ended, I went up to go visit my twin brother, Jared. I saw Uriah, who I've known since I was a sophomore in high school. He's like, man, you should fight. I think your wrestling style would be really, really conducive to it. And like 6 weeks later, he had gotten me a fight. And
Wow.
15 years later and 32, 33 pro fights, something like that. And here we are. And if it wasn't for wrestling, I wouldn't have ever fought. And if it wasn't for fighting, I wouldn't have my businesses or probably my wife or anything I've got right now. So I'm really, really grateful to the sport of wrestling to help kind of bring me along this path to where I am right now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And of course, along the way, you had to put in the time and the effort and, the grueling practices and things like that. What's kind of the mindset behind that? What really drove you to continue to excel, even going back to high school where, like you said, you're Bellarmine's first All-American? What really drove you to do that?
Discipline. I just always felt like there was people always telling me I couldn't. And I was really motivated by kind of telling people that they were wrong. As things progressed and I had some success, I knew that my brothers were not living vicariously through me, but they were relishing in my accomplishments. And it was definitely a family achievement, anything I did, because my brothers helped push me to be successful. And so, every single day it was just like, even after I win a tournament, it was like, there's people out there that didn't think I could do it, or, I didn't do it as well as I could have. And so, the sport of wrestling, there's never like a perfect match, and I'm sure it's the same thing with other sports, but you're constantly chasing something that's unattainable, but it gives you an end point to shoot for. And so, I was fortunate enough to be around a number of coaches that always expected more of me than I thought I could produce, and coaches that I really admired and didn't ever want to let down. And so, the fact that I was a 2-time Pac-12 finalist and a top 12 finisher in the country my senior year is probably better than I really should have done. I exceeded far beyond what my potential was. And I just hate losing, man. I hate losing way more than winning. And
yeah.
I remember a lot of matches in college where, people are like, why aren't you excited? And it's like, I get that I beat somebody good, but the expectation is that you're going to beat somebody good. And so I don't want to celebrate because then it looks like I wasn't supposed to do that, and I want I want to act like I've been there before. It's like, you're right. I just beat the number 1 ranked guy in the country. I was supposed to. I knew all along I was supposed to do that. And so it's just a chip on my shoulder. That's kind of how my life has been as far as trying to be successful in something that's just hard. Like, you got to relish in the hard.
Yeah. And just the grind, the work. I think that's something that I've heard many times is hating losing even more than you enjoy winning. That I've heard that. I think Michael Jordan, people like that who are just at the pinnacle, right? The height.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, this is probably more like junior, senior year at Bellarmine, and they would make the announcements, over the loudspeaker, right? And they would announce your tournaments, right, that you won. And I remember thinking like, damn, he's just like killing it. Like, you won, I don't know how many tournaments you won or what, but I just remember hearing about it a lot and just being like, dang, yeah, he's doing well. So I thought that was pretty cool. What do you do now? So I know you mentioned, we're 40 now, or 40 years old now. We were talking before we started recording about, I'm a basketball player, about how like I'm better now and how you're better now as a wrestler than we were even when we were probably at the prime physically, right? 15, 20 years old, because we have the knowledge of the game or the sport. And so what are kind of your plans now going forward? Let's say COVID restrictions are lifted. What does your training look like? How long do you anticipate that going? And then, sorry, this is going to be a lot of questions, and then after that, what is sort of like the retransition into normal society, right? Like, wartime's over, now you're a civilian again. And what does that look like? How do you anticipate staying healthy in the future? So I guess training program now, training program post MMA?
Yeah. So as of right now, a lot of what I'm doing is by myself, which is really hard. That old expression, iron sharpens iron, is, if you rub a knife on the ground long enough, sure, it might get sharp, but it's going to get dull a lot in there too while you do it. So, I've got the first weekend in November, a group of people that are friends of mine. We're going to go run this. It's called Feet to the Beach. It's a 6-person team. It's a 200-mile race from Fresno all the way out to Pismo, and you alternate legs. And so once you set your order, it's set. And I think I got nominated for the longest 3 legs combined, and I got the front one is the difficult and the back one is the difficult. So I'm sandwiched between it. And like, there's other people that have like these 3 legs that are all like the easy, they're like the green, color, and they're like short distances. Like, how did I wind up with like the 3 hardest and I don't know how I got volunteered for that, but they just said, we know that you're not going to have a problem. You're
Right.
not going to complain. And it's like, yeah, I signed up to do it. I know it's hard. And so part of what I'm doing right now is I'm just trying to find new ways to challenge myself. And a lot more of it is challenging myself mentally than physically,
Right.
At some
Right.
point, the body, it always will. But if I keep pushing myself mentally to do things that are hard, then when I do get to go back into a wrestling room or back into a gym and start training again, then hopefully I'll be able to pick right up where I left off. And unfortunately, with these COVID restrictions, a lot more of it depends on your discipline. I have to now make sure that what I'm putting into my body every time is ideal fuel. I have to make sure I'm getting the appropriate kind of rest. I have to make sure that when I'm done working out, when I was in high school, it's like, what, stretching? Isn't that what old people do?
Right.
It's like, no, now, like, I want to make sure that I'm stretching, I'm getting a good dynamic warm up before. I want to make sure I'm getting a great cool down afterwards. I spend probably more time with getting prepared to work out and finishing a workout than I do actually working out. The biggest thing is, it's having that high IQ, not just being like, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to slug people today. Like, yeah, that's great. Sometimes doing the Rocky workouts, just lifting chains and rocks is great. But, how do you prepare your body for a lifetime of fitness, And so there's a number of wrestlers that come in and they're like, you're 40, man? I can't believe that. And it's like these younger kids that are in their prime and they're like, one of these days I'm going to take you down. One of these days, I don't get it. How do you get it? And so the biggest things I tell them is like, every day you come in, you're training to wrestle all the guys in the country, right? You're trying to get better. And I'm just preparing to wrestle you. And so I watch you. I know what your weaknesses are. I know what your strengths are. And I'm able to direct traffic away from your strengths and towards your weaknesses. And so I'm able to explain things. And they're like, well, how is that? And it's just like, it's years of wrestling. It's years of anything. The more you put into something, the better you'll get. And I'm now trying to turn my attention from like doing that as a coach, which obviously I still do, but trying to turn that to myself. Like, how do I make myself better? How do I focus on my weaknesses to turn them into strengths? And I would like to still be able to wrestle when I'm 60. Obviously I'm probably not going to be at the level I'm at right now. I have no desire to be, competing in MMA at the highest level for another 10 years or anything like that, but a couple more fights, sure. And a lot of that is being smart, having good strategies. And, that was the biggest thing in high school is I learned that if wrestling was important to me, then school was important. So I tried to get good grades. And then I was able to get some opportunities to wrestle in college because I wasn't a 2.0 student. I wasn't a risk for these schools to give me scholarship money. And then not just that, but like if school is important to you, all the things are important. So if you love to wrestle, then you've got to love to cut weight. You've got to love to be in the practice room grinding. You've got to love being exhausted because otherwise it's all just going to feel like a pain in the butt. And it's like, Are you really going to enjoy it when it's all over? And I look back very fondly at my experience. And that's why at 40, I still want to do it. I still crave, trying to make another world team and putting my body through that because I love it. I'm passionate about it. And I want to be healthy for the rest of my life. And wrestling is the way I stay healthy.
Yeah, it's really true. You really have to love the process. And that's one thing I say a lot to clients and on this podcast is that, there's a million different ways to get fit and you have to do the one that you love. Otherwise you're not going to stick with it. You're not going to and one other thing you said about, you know, the mental IQ, I just started playing basketball again 3 weeks ago. I'm doing every Saturday now. I'm playing with 17 to 24-year-olds. And so I'm the old guy on the court, which is a completely new experience for me because I used to be the young guy playing with the 50-year-olds. And now, just like you said, like I'm just focused on that one guy. So and that's the process, right? Like you said, cutting weight as a wrestler, that's you know, you have to enjoy doing that. Same thing. I was enjoying picking apart this 17-year-old kid that I was playing last week. And he was a lefty, right? So I kind of analyzed, all right, well, let's see how good his right hand is. Turns out he had no right hand. So I'm like, perfect. This is like the easiest strategy in the world. Make him go to his right and then wait until he wants to bring it back left. Wait till he crosses over, pick the ball out, and I look like a champion, right? Just because I know that one move, and that's just one of, I don't know, 5 potential ones that he could possibly do. But it's totally true. Like you just have to use your brain power a little bit more. I wasn't telling anybody that I was sucking wind 20 times more than those guys were, but those little strategies, right? So yeah, that's pretty cool. What I had another question as far as kind of relating you to sort of a normal person. Maybe somebody watching this is not at a very high level in their fitness, and so they're watching you talk about all these successes that you've had and things like that. But on the other hand, maybe to kind of make you look a little more human, what are some areas that you've actually struggled with your health, your fitness, and what kind of strategies have you implemented to overcome those struggles?
Well, number one, you know, the successes are only defined because of the failures. You know, those great heights feel so great because you've had so many lows. And, you know, I've been fortunate enough that my highs have been on big stages, but it doesn't take away from the lows that I've experienced. And those are in the room, you know what I mean? Those are in the grind, and to be able to push through is hard. You know, anybody can feel great when they're winning everything. And, you know, so I've had some issues with, I had an ulcer for a little bit, and I have severe sleep apnea, and we didn't know it until I was like almost 30. So once we started having kids, like I was exhausted all the time, and my wife's like, "Oh, you're just tired. You should get up the baby." And then all of a sudden we realized, like, man, like you slept for 12 hours for some reason, and you're still tired. So, you know, overcoming that with having to get a CPAP and figuring out like, man, you're not getting restful sleep. You're not resting. But, you know, I've also had to overcome some pretty significant injuries. My junior year in the Pac-12 finals, I broke a bone in my foot. I basically, the equivalent of breaking my ankle. And I wrestled at the NCAA championships 2 weeks later with a cortisone shot and a tape leg, and couldn't really do a whole bunch. I fought a guy named Justin Gaethje. He's now currently the UFC lightweight interim champ. He's fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov October 24th for the unified belt. And I was beating him through 2.5 rounds, and I blew out my knee from a leg kick.
Wow.
You know, didn't know he was going to be who he is now in the process, you know, but it was an important fight for me at that time. And so, you know, there's lots of times where it's just hard, you know, choosing to walk away from the Thanksgiving table to go running while your family's there celebrating so you can make weight is not fun. There's nothing fun about it. And, you know, I've had plenty of times where, you know, you roll over and you hit the snooze button because you just need that day every now and again. And don't beat yourself up. Everyone's fitness journey is different. You know, I've gone out there and I've tried to play basketball with kids half my age, and I just look like an idiot. You know, try to play soccer. Can't do it, right? Like those aren't my sports. That's not what I'm meant for. And a lot of times, you know, running or swimming or cycling, these other things that I try to do with other people because they're uncomfortable, I feel super inadequate. And that's okay, right? Like I would rather feel inadequate doing something than just stay on the couch all day and feel inadequate in my own skin. And yeah, just put one step in front of the other, right? My grandma's 95. She had a hip replacement, and my grandfather passed away from Alzheimer's. And like 6 weeks after the hip replacement, she did like a 10K Alzheimer's walk with my aunts. I was like, Grandma, what are you doing? Stop moving. You stop living. You got to know what you're after. And so that's the thing is like, yeah, not everyone's an MMA fighter. That's fine. most people look at me and they wouldn't believe it if you told them anyways. So your own fitness journey is your own, and you're going to have highs and lows. And what defines you in terms of character is like, yeah, say, cool, this is one of the lows. What's around the bend is going to be one of my highs. Let's keep pushing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. That's a good segue to my final question, which is a little more big picture. So let's say some university calls you in to do, let's say, the graduation speech. So we're going like motivational talk, talking about life principles, values, goal setting, whatever direction you want to go with that. But in 1 or 2 minutes, what's kind of the big picture that you would recommend to somebody who, let's say, is in like their early 20s, as far as life principles and values?
A lot of times, so I'm a pretty religious guy. We went to Bellarmine, I went to Marquette. I taught at a private Catholic high school here in Bakersfield called Garces Memorial for a few years before I tried to open up another business. And I had the opportunity to be the director of campus ministry. And so for me, a lot of the stuff that I'm grounded in is my faith. I'm a really hardcore conservative Catholic. And the other day I was doing this big project, and the hope was for me to be present for it. And instead I had to keep leaving, and I was running errands because not everything was going the way I wanted. And at some point I just stopped, and nothing was going my way. And I was really, really upset. And I just stopped, and I was just so thankful for everything that I did have. I had an opportunity to make money that night. I had a job. I had friends that were there. They had my back while I was gone running these errands. And at the end of the day, it's all about character. And that's what I'm trying to teach my children. And fitness, a lot of times, is about character, right? When it's hard, do you give up or do you keep pushing, right? It's not about competing with the next person. It's about competing with yourself. I want to be better today than I was yesterday. And whether that means that it's a character thing or I can shave a second off my mile time, whatever it is, I just want to be better. And I think that especially in the world we live in right now, trying to be a better person and putting that like energy out into the world is going to benefit everybody, not just yourself, right? So when you have opportunities and you think about it and you're conscious, there's that little thing in the back of your mind saying you can do it. Listen to that voice, because they're right? Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. And so everything that I do at this point now is secondary to my family, my wife and my kids, my businesses. If they're happy, then I feel like I'm doing a good job. But at the end of the day, I know I've got 6 little eyes looking at me to see what I'm doing, to be the benchmark. And so we have the opportunity to move this world in a really, really great way. And if MMA or wrestling or fitness or basketball or just being kind is the avenue in which you can do it in, then do it. Seize those opportunities to be great, even if they're, a roaring fire or a spark. Be great in those instances.
Brian, we're going to wrap it up. I don't know if do you have a website at all or information as far as how people can find you for your next fight or anything like that, or how to keep in touch with you, social media?
Yeah. I've got a Facebook page, Brian, the Bandit Cobb MMA, and then Bandit Cobb MMA on Instagram. I'm not really like super tech savvy, and I don't really post too much unless I've got something coming up, but yeah, there's some cool stuff on there, some photos from the world championships and some fights and things like that. So yeah.
Nice. That's great. Well, Brian Cobb, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate you joining us, Health in the Real World podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Health in the Real World show. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below. Visit mycorebalance.com to learn more.